Welcome back to the Mill Studio 92 tutorials. In this video, we are returning to the audio editing software called Audacity, free, very high powered and constantly updating itself, so highly recommended. And we're going to get stuck into a few more of the features that it offers. In this video, we will cover recording your voice track directly into Audacity using the equipment in Studio 92, applying effects to the voice, and adding music and audio clips and mixing them all together through a multi-track edit. You can of course play all of these various audio clips and pieces of music live into your recording using the sound pads or your phone or your laptop connected up to the Rodecaster, but sometimes it's easier to do this in the edit to save you having too much going on at the same time during the recording. It allows you to just focus on your guest and having a clear conversation with your guest without any of the other bits to think about, because it can all be done in the edit as well. So to start, let's make sure that we are set up correctly and connected up to the microphone that you want to use to capture your voice. We're going to go again to Audio Setup, click here, and this time we want to look down to Recording Device. When you look at this drop-down menu, it will have all of the microphones that you can potentially use. In my case, the two main ones are my MacBook Pro microphone and the Claret 4 pre-USB. If you were in Studio 92, connect up your laptop via the USB cable to the Rodecaster and then open Audacity and then come to your drop down menu and Rodecaster will come up as an option. Then choose that as your option at this step. Okay, but I'm going to choose Claret. Also make sure your playback device is what you want, so when you listen back to your clips and your voice, MacBook Pro speakers, that's what I want. You make sure that you have whatever you want connected up there. Once you have selected the mic you want to use and you've selected the playback device, now we are ready to record. So we simply click the record button, and now you can see that those blue waveforms are forming. They represent the audio, your voice, and you can also see that little green progress bar in the middle of the top screen there. That's the input. That is a really, really important indicator of how much sound that your voice is giving to the program. You always want it to be somewhere between -12, -6. Where it is now is pretty okay as well, -18. Let's just record a short voice track which we can then use as part of this little mini sample podcast. Here we go. Hi there, this is the Studio 92 podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Caughey, and in this episode, we will be catching up with a very successful entrepreneur who is running her thriving services company from right here at the Mill Enterprise Centre in Drogheda. We will also be getting the latest news from Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter. Now, if you've been enjoying the series so far, please follow the show on Apple's podcasts or on Spotify and give us a rating or a review if you're feeling very generous. So, let's get right into this week's episode. Before we meet this week's guest, let's check out the latest news about Elon Musk and that Twitter purchase. Here's what Bloomberg had to say about it earlier. That's all I'm going to record for now, so I'm going to click stop. And I have got my first track, okay? So let's just zoom out and see what we got here. I'll zoom back in a little bit more. Zooming is always very handy. Okay, so then we can get our time bar just nice at the start there, and let us have a little listen. Click the record button, and now you can see that those blue waveforms are forming. They represent, so that is obviously all of the track. So what I'm going to do is jump forward, little mini sample podcast. Here we go. Hi there, this is the Studio 92 podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Caughey, and in this episode, we will be catching up with a very successful entrepreneur who is running her thriving services company for... Okay, so as in video 1, we're going to do our first very light edit. So we want the track to start somewhere around here. Let's just zoom in here. Okay, that's where we wanted to start. So I'm simply going to click and drag all the way back. And again, if you want to speed this up, you can just simply zoom out and do it maybe a little bit faster. I'm going to right click and cut. And now you can see that the audio I want snaps back to the very start. Hey there, this is the Studio 92 podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Hawhey, and in this... And again, I just want to take off the very end. Here's what Bloomberg had to say about it earlier. That's all I'm going to... So again, I just simply want to drag the bit I don't want across, right click and cut. Okay, now let me see what our levels are like. I'm going to click play again. There, this is the Studio 92 podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Hawhey. Okay, now I just want to amplify that a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to, in order to select the whole track, I'm going to hover anywhere. Remember, there are toolbar with my selector tool. Just hover anywhere and double click. It will turn white. That's what we want. Then we're going to go up to effects. And now you can see that there's a ton of effects to play around with here. Again, these won't be covered in this video because much of the time you won't need any of these. Amplification is one that you will often go to amplify your voice or an audio clip or whatever it might be. So let's just do amplify for this purpose of this video. And then it's quite intuitive. You can simply play around with it. You can de-amplify and you can boost it a little bit. So I'm just going to boost it. Let's just see where it goes. I've moved it up a little bit. I'm going to apply. And you can see that those blue waveforms got bigger, which means that it's louder. So let's have a listen now. Hey there, this is the Studio 92 podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Hawhey. Okay, I'm happy with this because now we're hitting closer to sort of -6. So you want to be somewhere between -12 and -6. So that is my voice. I'm happy with that. But now I want to start adding a couple of things to my voice track to start building up my episode. Okay, and we're going to start with music. Now, when it comes to adding music to podcasts, it's very important to know that only in very specific circumstances is it possible to use commercial music from established artists. So generally what we do is go to production libraries, like here's one, premiumbeat.com. Here's another one, Epidemic Sound, okay? And these production libraries feature tons of really high quality, well, they're not all high quality, they're generally very good samples that you can look through. You can basically play what you want. You can listen to and when you find the one that you like, you can simply buy the license for that. Now, the costs depend completely on the type of track, the type of use, and the platform you're buying it from. So I would just suggest playing around with this. So premiumbeat.com, Epidemic Sound are two that I use quite regularly, okay? But don't just rip an Ed Sheeran track off YouTube and pop it onto your podcast because technically you don't own the rights. Gaining the rights can be a very complex and expensive process, so you would really need to know that you wanted them. But for now, I'm just going to import a music track that I purchased earlier. So to do that, I'm going down to File. Don't open, always import, because I want my new track to jump up on a new channel that I can play around with. So import audio, and here's my track. So I'm going to move my voice track again. If you take the cursor and hover up around the little white band, you can move it wherever you want. So let's just have a listen. So I think I'd like my voice to come somewhere around there. So here we go. Let's just put it there and see what happens. And of course you couldn't hear any of that because the music is too loud and the voice is fighting with it unsuccessfully. So what we want to do is reduce the volume of the music so that you can hear my voice, because I'm happy with the levels of my voice. However, do I want to reduce the entire volume of the entire track, music track? No, I don't. I just want to actually take the part where I'm talking over and bring that volume down. Okay, so to do this, we are going to use a different editing tool than we used in video 1. We are going to go to this one. If you hover over it, it will tell you envelope tool. So I'm going to click that. And what this allows us to do, this now you can see it becomes 2 little dots. Okay, and what we need to do is basically click the dots around where we want the music to start fading down or fading up, depending on what you're doing. In this case, we're fading down. So let's just try it around. Click here, and you can see we've created 2 little dots. And for now, I click and drag down. Okay, so you can see as that happens, we're actually pulling down the volume of the entire track. So what I want to do now, I don't want that to happen, so I want to go just beside it and click again. Okay, so now I've clicked created some new dots. Now I've kind of created 2 places where I can start to play around. So now I can keep the volume, or the original volume for the first part, and then on the other side of the 3 dots I can play around with it. But again, what I want to happen is the volume to come down where my voice is, and to come back up again when I'm finished. So let me click here. And then click here. So now what you can see is that I can just play around with the middle. And it creates a little fade for us, okay? And let's just move my voice up here a little bit. So now let's have a listen to and see what the difference is here. Hi there, this is the Studio 92. Okay, still a little loud, so I'm just going to put it down even more and to match it on this side as well. And let's go again. Hi there, this is the Studio 92 podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Hawley, and in this episode we will be catching up with a very successful... Okay, I'm happier with that, but just one tiny little bit. And again, this is all about your ears, playing around with it, okay? But essentially, the tool you want is the envelope tool. And let's just go back to my selector tool because I want to jump around a little bit. Let's check out the latest news about Elon Musk and that Twitter purchase. Here's what Bloomberg had to say. So again, we need to play around with that a little bit more, okay? But I'm not going to do it for the purpose of this video. I'm just going to let you play around with your own tracks. I'm going to close it down even more. So now what we've ended up with is sort of a top and tailed purchase. Here's what Bloomberg had to say about it. Okay, and I think what we might do is simply just fade it down when that's over. Okay, so maybe we'll create 2 more and we can actually just fade it out altogether. Okay. Here's what Bloomberg had to say about it earlier. So now you can see it's gone. Okay, and what I've done there is actually just tee up a clip of Bloomberg. Okay, so let's just listen to that last part one more time. Out the latest news about Elon Musk and that Twitter purchase. Here's what Bloomberg had to say about it earlier. So now I've just sort of faded back up the music as a little kind of audio technique, and now I'm going to import my audio clip. And again, we know by now, File, Import audio, and I have my Elon Musk clip. And as you can see, that jumps to a new track again. And this is what we want. This is multi-track editing. We want all of the different components, all of the pieces of Lego in their own little place, because as you can see, we need to do separate things to each separate file in order to make them sound how we want them and sound at their best before we bake the cake. So let's have a listen to this clip.
Matt, I've got to go to the finance because that seems to be the mystery. How financially...
Okay, of course, we're not too happy with those levels. So what do? I'm going to hover over it, double click, make it turn white, go up to effects, amplify, and we're going to see what we can do in terms of amplifying it.
Matt, I've got to go to the finance because that seems to be the mystery.
Much better. Okay, so now what I've got is three things going on. My about Elon Musk and that Twitter purchase. Here's what Bloomberg had to say about it earlier.
Matt, I've got to go to the finance because that seems to be the mystery.
Okay, so now I've got my three different components, a bit of opening music, it fades down to my sort of hello and welcome, fades back up again just to sort of top and tail it, and then fades out altogether, and my clip that I've cued comes in, okay? All the levels are where I need them. I've treated my voice a little bit, I've treated the clip a little bit, and what I'm going to do now is bake the cake. I have all the ingredients, now I just want to mix it down into one file, okay? So to do that, file, export. I can export it as an MP3 file or a WAV file. When it comes to voice and basic music, there's not a huge amount in it. MP3 is a smaller file, easier to send, all that, so I tend to work with MP3. Plus, it's the format of choice for podcasts. So let's just call this Rodecaster Pro Tutorial Test, and I'm going to save it in Rodecaster Pro. Save that off. You'll see there your tracks will be mixed down and exported as one stereo file. I'm happy with that because I've made all the components. This is metadata. I don't tend not to use that or worry about it, so I just go okay. It's boiling everything down now. Okay. So let's just go back up to file. Let's start a new session of Audacity and let's have a listen to what we created. So I'm going to import audio. Back to the Rodecaster Pro. Here is the file I just created, Rodecaster Pro Tutorial Test. Double click it and let's have a listen. Hi there, this is the Studio 92 podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Hawhey, and in this episode we will be catching up with a very successful entrepreneur who is running her thriving services company from right here at the Mill Enterprise Centre in Drogheda. We will also be getting the latest news from Elon Musk's acquisition of Twitter. Now, if you've been enjoying the series so far, please follow the show on Apple's podcast or on Spotify and give us a rating or a review if you're feeling very generous. So, let's get right into this week's episode. Before we meet this week's guest, let's check out the latest news about Elon Musk and that Twitter purchase. Here's what Bloomberg had to say about it earlier.
Matt, I've got to go to the finance because that seems to be the mystery. How financially stressed is Mr. Musk right now?
So there you have it, our three elements boiled down. And again, these are the edits you will need to make most of your podcast episodes. While there are many more features that you can explore in Audacity, we wanted to cover off in these particular videos the very basic but very essential ones that you will need, the tools you will need to create your very first episodes of your podcast, bringing in music, clips, sound effects, whatever you might want. Happy podcasting.